Таджахал, ни хао, здравствуйте, привет, як там, hello, karate, salve, welcome. Getting hot outside. Back in Shuangjing and out of Chongping, the semester is over. What would you do? Study or work? Would you train your own teacher? How do you like to finish your semester? And a bonus, some Chinese TV shows. Folks, this is episode number 44 of the Language Log Podcast. My name is Steven. Let's get to it. All right, episode number 44 of the Language Log Podcast. And yes, it is getting hot in Beijing. I've only ever lived in one other place that got as hot as Beijing, and that was in Busan, South Korea. I was there for about a year, but I landed in February, and so it wasn't very hot during the wintertime. February, March wasn't very hot, but then starting April, it got warm, and then by May, it was hot. And I remember going to school May and June, just sweating. And especially like even into July, I think it was. I remember it was July and August off. So I left. I actually went down to Southeast Asia to do some traveling. But then when I came back in September, the weather was sort of nice already. But Beijing is the only place that I've lived in as long and had to live in an apartment here. My South Korean apartment was a lot smaller. And since I wasn't, I honestly can't remember what it was like in that apartment in the summertime. I remember it was hot and humid anyway. Well, I'd be in the office, to tell you the truth. I think it was because in South Korea, we had to still go to the school, even though we weren't teaching. We had to show up at the school for like between 8 and 5 or 8:30 and 4:30 or something like that. And they had air conditioning. So that was nice. So I don't remember what it was like to live in an apartment at that time in the hot and humid summer. But Beijing and China, I mean, not only have I traveled the country during the summer, but working from home over the last 3 or 4 years. Well, okay, I guess that's the big thing, is that living here in Beijing, this is the first country that I've lived in that is of such extreme heat and that I had to look professional, that I actually had a job. And I always sort of wondered, my big question was always like, how do people in Singapore go to work? How do they stay cool? How do they not sweat through their clothes all the time was my big question. And I now know the answer. Not so much I've lived in Singapore, but I have lived in, since I've been living in Beijing for quite a while, basically you just change clothes. Like, that's the answer. You sweat, you try to stay hydrated, and then, yeah, you change clothes as you need throughout the day. Is it raining? No, that's just wind. It looks like it's going to rain, but the weather forecast doesn't say it's going to rain. We'll see if it actually does. All that is to say is that, Beijing gets extraordinarily hot. China gets extraordinarily hot. And from now, it's proper hot. We're coming up to the summer solstice in about 12 days or so, another 2 weeks, June 21st, right? Yes, June 21st, summer solstice. Come on, Steve, you should know this by now. And at that point, June, hot. July, even hotter. August, hot and extremely humid. I only have the one bad thing about the semester ending is that I'm no longer in a hotel, which means no longer can I just, run an air conditioner all day. I now have to be a little bit more judicious in my power usage. Namely, I only have a small Xiaomi rotating fan, and it's on right now. I'm not sure if you can hear it, but that is my primary source of staying cool in this time. I have it pointed directly at me, and it just basically runs all day whenever I'm sitting in my office chair. Now, if you're thinking of coming to Beijing or coming to China at this time of year, just be aware that it's going to be hot. It's going to be humid. And yes, it stays like this. Again, May, June, July, August is when it gets really hot. And then September, it just changes. And all of a sudden, pretty much overnight, actually almost over the weekend, basically the weekend will be hot. Friday and Saturday will be hot. And then all of a sudden Sunday, they'll issue a sort of a proclamation, a declaration. Yeah, it's going to get cool tomorrow. And then all of a sudden Monday gets cold. Not cold, but nice. It finally gets nice. And then the leaves start changing and everything else. But yeah, the Beijing summers, the Chinese summers, oh boy, They are something to behold and something to experience. All right, so there's your weather update for Beijing, China right now. Semester is over. The students still have another 2 weeks to go. They have math, accounting, computer science. What's the other one that they have? There's I think they already did their physical education, their phys ed test or whatever. They have 3 or 4 more exams and another 2 weeks of school to go. They're not done until, let me just check calendar, until June 26th. I think that 26th or 27th, that is when they are officially done and finished with the university semester. Now, you might wonder, if it's another 2 weeks, why are you done already? I have no idea. I'm guessing because, and this is just me speculating, that they didn't want the English classes to be interfering with the more important subjects of math and finance and history, etc. So getting the English credits out of the way was sort of a way to make it easier on the students so that they can focus on something. Well, I mean, it's a finance university. If they don't do well in math, that's a big problem. If they don't do well in English, that's not such a big problem because they can just pay someone else to do it if they do the finance part properly, right? Now, this is sort of a thought that I've had or been having over the last couple months since my return to the classroom. This semester was the first time I've been teaching in more than 8 years, basically. And this week's videos or this past week's videos on YouTube kind of show my thinking for the last little while. The first one, what would you do, study or work? That's actually a question that popped into mind when I think I've mentioned it on this podcast before, that if you saw a student who wasn't paying attention in class, would you act like a policeman and try to get them to study? How many times would you do that before you just give up? Not only that, would you ever suggest to that student, why don't you just go get a job? For me, when I was in university, back in Canada, there was sort of you had a choice. There were quite a few people who either went to university or just left, finished high school and that was it. I would say the vast majority of people I went to school with did go to university. Some of them didn't finish. Some of them went and they were like, this is not for me. Others finished it, but then found jobs doing something completely unrelated. But then that does beg the question. If you saw a young man or a young woman, 20 years old, 19 years old, just graduated from high school, or struggling to even concentrate, they're just bored. We're not even talking, is there different grades of boredom? There's game playing boredom where they come to class and they just play games the entire time, which I guess you could argue is sort of a passive listening experience. Okay, but what if they're just sleeping through class, or moreover, if they're just skipping class altogether? What would you tell them? Would you say, you know what, hey, I hear you, why don't you just go get a job? You see, in China, and I'm sure you probably know more about the history of China over the last 100 years, especially the last 70 years, than probably a lot of younger people do. And sort of the fallout from that. Now, the thing to keep in mind is that if you, like in Canada, if you said to a young person, go get a job on a farm or go get a job in a factory, the kids, the Chinese kids that you see at university are being told by their parents not so much to not get a job in the factory, but to study hard so that they don't have to get a job in the factory. In Canada, you can tell a young person to do that because it's sort of a, a method to instill the value of a dollar. Like my family comes from an agrarian background, a lot of farmers in my family. And being a farmer is a proud thing. It's a good thing. Working with your hands, working the land, struggling, toiling away, and doing good business along the way so the farm keeps on going. But the other reason behind getting a manual labor job, whether it is working on a farm, working in a warehouse, or working for the city as like a roughneck, basically, is that in Canada is meant as a means to teach you the value of hard work, of working with your hands, and that if you don't get an education, you will top out in the amount of money that you'll be able to make. The general consensus is that if you go to university, if you get an education, you will be able to move up the ranks of not just your profession, but also the pay scale. Now, China's history being what it is, I mean, if I told a young man or young woman in China to go get a job in the factory, I'm sure I'd be getting a call from the university very soon saying, Stephen, don't do that. Please urge the kids to study the books, to study hard in class, and don't be telling them to just go get a job. Now, the other thing that I didn't mention in this YouTube short that I published was, well, what if they also had a job? Because some students do. What if they had a part-time job, such as working online? And by that, I mean, like if they were not just a YouTube streamer, but a Bilibili streamer, a Douyin streamer, Xiaohongshu streamer. I've been told Xiaohongshu is kind of hard to monetize, but Douyin you can make money on. Taobao you can make money on. So there are ways to work and study at the same time. I guess the real question is, should they? And this, I kind of can't help but wonder if maybe this is one of the reasons why the Asian student, the Chinese student, is seen to be so much smarter than many of their Western counterparts, because they are not encouraged to go get jobs at the same time. They're encouraged to do extracurricular activities, like do sports, take part of debate clubs and stuff like that, but they are not encouraged to get jobs or make money. That's something you do after you graduate, after you get your degree, and you enter into the workforce, basically. All this is to say, if you met a young person these days and you saw them struggling with their studies, would you encourage them to struggle through, to persist, or would you just tell them, why don't you just go get a job? Even if it is like go overseas and work and travel. I'm not sure if it's that easy though. And I'm not sure of the situation with the Chinese visa and everything, if it's as easy for them to go work and travel overseas if they don't have a university degree already. It might just be that they need that degree just to prove that they have the means or the ability to pay for things. And maybe that's all it is. But yeah, encouraging a young Chinese person to go work and travel around the world, not really the thing to do these days. Not really something you hear being talked about or encouraged, at least not in the same way that it's done in Canada and the United States. That's not to say that there aren't young people in China who do work these jobs, whether they're the Kuaidi Yuan, the Kuaidi people. How do you say that? The delivery people. There we go. Whether delivery people, if they actually do work in warehouses and factories, would the people in the factories rather be at university than working in a factory? Almost guarantee they'd say yes. So what would you do? Study or work? Persist through your studies that you don't like, or just quit, give up, and get a job. I mean, you can always go back to the university later on. It's not like it's going to go away anytime soon. Or could it? That's a different argument. Now, the next question I posed on the YouTube channel this past week was, would you train your own teacher? Now, I've talked about this. I think I touched on this. Actually, I talked about it quite a bit in last week's episode about the AI agents, basically training your own teacher, your own language teacher. Now, it doesn't have to be a language teacher. It could be any subject teacher. And this last week of classes, I saw a lot of the students studying math, and I asked them, do you use AI to finish your math homework as much as you use AI to finish your English homework? And they said, no. I'm like, well, why? That seems unfair. And one of the reasons is because the math work, they can't use AI tools in the exam. And so logically, they actually told me the logic behind math is a lot harder to understand than the logic behind English. It's not to say that English isn't an important subject. It's just that their English abilities are such that it's a lot easier for them to kind of coast and get by rather than really push through. Whereas the math, I guess it gets just even harder the more that they go on. Does that make sense? I don't know. See, I'm not very good at math. I was better at languages than I was at math, but that's because I didn't like the sort of the definitive logic of math, even though I like numbers, especially when the numbers in my bank account are larger rather than smaller. But getting back to these AI teachers, the idea is basically to use this modern large language model, machine learning, these LLMs and the AI agents and stuff like that, to create an online service for ourselves, basically to replace the apps that we've been using for the last decade or more. I think it was actually the CEO of Google who recently said that AI agents will replace the app as we know it. Apps like applications, phone applications, computer applications, used to do a lot of the services for us. But now we have AI agents that are able to think, in quotation marks, because you're able to feed them so much information and then let them sort of decide or choose or analyze and figure out what you need from it, basically. For example, I have an agent right now. I've programmed a few of these using Zapier, make.com, and I'm currently working on Relevance AI to create another few AI agents or chatbots, or these things to work for me. What the goal is to scrape websites or search the internet each and every day, compile a list of trending or news that's important to me, compile that into a Google Doc, put that into one folder, and then from that Google Doc, translate it into Chinese and modify that Chinese into simple Chinese, not simplified necessarily, of course, simplified characters, but simple Chinese, simpler Chinese. Basically, I want to grade that report to my language abilities. And I give it a target of like HSK 4, HSK 5, around there, because that's easy for me to do. The reason for doing this is because if I study the HSK materials, they sort of take you on one learning path, and they tell you to be like filial piety is great, and love of your country is the best thing ever, and romance and all this other stuff, and the classics of Chinese culture. Okay. But then there's the other language learning apps where it's just these idioms and slang and character by character. There's nothing really in between, where you are taking subjects or I'm taking subjects that I'm interested in and the words I want to know. For example, country names, brand names, modern way, like how do you upload something, download something, trade something in. These are all sort of different. It sounds silly to mention this, but I want something that is talking about something relevant to me, not made by a third party or another party who thinks that's what I should be learning at this point. The ultimate goal, there's actually a few ideas that I have here. The ultimate goal is to be creating a language experience wherein each and every day I get basically a report in Chinese, simple Chinese that I can understand, read quickly, get some vocabulary from it, some grammar as well, but then also create an MP3 file so I can listen along with it. The problem with this, I tried this with 11 Labs last week, and I sent it to a few other people that I know, and they all said that the Chinese was inaccurate. So the 11 Labs AI voice that was reading this compiled newsletter wasn't accurate. And I'm going, well, that's not something I really want to do, and I certainly wouldn't want to be publishing that to anybody and sort of misleading them into thinking that that's real Chinese. Of course, these days you do have to specify if something has been AI generated. I have no intention of deceiving people, but I want it to be accurate so that if you are listening and reading along with it, I want it to be accurate so you can repeat the words and learn from it. Now, if all this sounds very complicated, it's not overly complicated, but it does take time. And I think I talked about this a while ago. I posted it on Threads to generate a discussion there as well. Would you rather spend an hour learning how to make an AI agent, training your teacher, or would you rather spend that hour learning your language? Which one's the better option? Is there sort of a declining benefit to either one of them? Can you learn the language faster than it would take you to learn how to program an AI agent that would help you learn the language? I guess the other thing to consider is that you can do both, but the learning the technology behind the AI agents does take time away from contact time in your language. Even though I know, like, personally, when trying to program this AI agent, the best results I had was when I was writing everything in Chinese, or at least using Google Translate to help me, and then having the AI agent work in the Chinese language rather than trying to program it using English and expecting it to output Chinese. So that's something to keep in mind if you are looking to program your own AI agent, is to work within the language that you are trying to study. So if it's Mandarin Chinese, write in Mandarin Chinese. If it's Russian, do it in Russian, Ukrainian, Arabic, etc. I will make a video about this because I think this is not only really cool, but also can be adapted by anybody who wants to learn any language around the world, even the so-called dying languages. I bet even things like Latin or ancient Greek would be perfectly suited for something like this. So AI teacher, would you rather train your own teacher or just pay a teacher to use these tools for you and you just focus on the language and they can worry about using the tools and technologies to make class and the language learning experience a lot better? Which would you choose? Next up, how do you like to finish your semester? So I mentioned before that the students still have another 2 weeks to go, but I'm done. And I think as of today, I'm recording this on Monday, June 9th. One teacher has already left. Two teachers have already left. One left on Saturday, one left yesterday. I came back to my apartment. And then there's the fourth teacher who I think is actually moving up to Shenyang, but I'm not sure if she's doing that right away or if she's going to travel first before the beginning of the semester, or if she's going to go back to her homeland to visit and then come back to China afterwards. No idea. But this got me thinking, and it was a nice blue sky day on Friday, not because of the end of our semester or the end of the English classes, but because of the start of the GaoKao, which is goes until tomorrow, I guess, June 7th until 10th is when the GaoKao is running. If you don't know what the GaoKao is, this is the big, important university entrance examination that all Chinese kids basically have to write, all public school Chinese kids have to write, and defines sort of what they're able to do in terms of their studies over the next 3 or 4 years. Depending on their GaoKao scores, basically dictates where they can study, i.e. what city, which universities, and which subjects they can study. And they have to make a choice. I can't remember if they have to make the choices. They give them 3 choices, like in order, like number 1, number 2, number 3. I'm not sure if they do that before or after the GaoKao. But all I know is that once they get their GaoKao scores, then they start looking at universities and cities and subjects that they can study. And that will then almost determine what kind of job they get after they graduate. So all this is to say is that my students, or my now former students, they still have another 2 weeks of the semester to worry about exams. Then you have the high school kids who are worrying about the GaoKao right now. But after you're done all of that, what do? How do you like to not the dreams of summer vacation. I'm talking about when you finally walk out of that final exam, as I did on final class on Friday, walked out and like, that's it. I'm done. What else is there for me to do? Nothing. I can go home. I can follow my exact same Friday pattern and just go home. That's it. Done. So do you do a little ceremony? Do you get together with people? Do you sit and think? I guess one other thing to keep in mind about this is that as an expat, and I was also sort of thinking of the other teachers with this, is that you might never come back here. It's different as a first year or a second year student when you'll probably come back in the fall and resume your studies. But if you're a foreign teacher living overseas, you might never visit that university again. You might never see the kids again. You might not sit in that same place. You might not go to the cafeteria. It'll become but a distant memory. And it's things like that. If you've been watching the YouTube channel and listening to this podcast, you'll know that I've been taking videos and pictures of quite a few different things. You might think it's almost odd, like oversharing. My purpose with this is to not just share for you, but to preserve for me so that in 10 years, 5 years, I can look back and go, wow, that's where I was. That's what I was doing. And man, that was a long beard. What was I thinking? So what did I end up doing? Well, I ended up sitting outside for a little while. I recorded one video titled, Is the University Degree Worth It Anymore? And I actually think I'll redo that one because I wasn't too happy with, I did it unscripted and I wasn't too happy with how it sort of turned out. So I'll probably do that one again and publish it later on in the summer. But I sat around for a while, enjoyed the weather. It was quite nice weather as well. Walked around just a little bit more. And then when I walked out of the gate for maybe the last time, I went over to the Bao An, the guard, and I shook his hand. I said, "Thank you very much. I appreciate it. I'm leaving." He's like, "Are you going to come back?" I'm like, "We'll see." But the that who knows? I mean, he also seemed to have been rotated from the big gate position, so it seems that the Bao the guards get changed up every now and then. I'm sure there's some sort of security reason for that, but I don't always see him. And he was there when I first started, and he helped me out when the ID, they have facial recognition to get onto campus. For the first little while, it didn't work, and so he was just letting me in, and so that was I thought that was kind of nice, and so I shook his hand, said thank you very much, I appreciate it, and we'll see you again sometime. So I figured that was a nice summation of the semester, seeing him one last time, and then after that, yeah, back on the bike and cycling back to the hotel. I'll tell you what I did do. Although I could have left right away, the hotel checked out, I remembered that there's a barbecue dinner that they have that they offer on the weekends, I guess. And I'm like, well, why not? Let's treat ourselves. And it was good. 138 renminbi, original price 168, but since I was staying at the hotel, they give me a discount of 30 kwai. So it cost 138 renminbi, which is almost the same that it would cost for me to order chuar or skewered meat. And if I did order beer, it'd actually be more expensive than that. It'd be about 160 or 170 renminbi. But the chuar and the naan bread would be about 125. So I got thinking, well, instead of ordering why don't I go to the hotel buffet dinner? And I'm glad I did. It was very good. So that was Friday night. Had a bunch there. I didn't drink. I think I had one beer on Friday night and pretty much overate. And then on Saturday, not only did I hit the breakfast buffet again, but then I went to the dinner again Saturday night, one last time, and same deal. They had different barbecues. On Friday night, it was roast beef. On Saturday night, it was crawfish. What is it? Can't remember how you translate crawfish. What is it? Translate.google. Crawfish. All right. Xiaolongxia is crawfish in Chinese. So they had that on Saturday, but on Friday, they had roast beef. Both very good. They also had pork chops. Oh, it was fantastic. A very good finish to staying at the hotel. Not only that, I can say we finally figured out the characters for the Beijing Rose Garden. If you remember me talking about this really expensive mansion place that's right across from the hotel. I'll publish that video in a little bit, but we finally figured out the characters. I went and shot that. I had to shoot it twice. The first time I shot it, I got it wrong, or I didn't get all the characters. But by the second time, I finally got all the characters because I asked Xiao Hongshu for some answers and was finally able to finish that chapter out in Changping as well. Other than that, I'm done. I mean, other than, what I have to pick up my visa later this week, and then I have nothing to do. Technically, I don't have to do anything else this summer other than just prepare for the next semester, or I don't know, maybe even go back to Canada, do some traveling or something like that. So we will see what happens over the next 2 months. June, July, August. Yes, I have 3 months off. What am I going to do with my time? What would you do with 3 months off? Let me know. All right, and finally, as currently as a newsletter exclusive, but something I will be talking about on the YouTube channel rather shortly, and something that I'd like to start doing, but I can't say I watch very much of it. I don't do it very much anyway in English. That is watching TV. So I posted to Xiao Hongshu a couple weeks ago, what are some Chinese TV shows that people are watching these days? And what are some good ones? I've seen a lot of my students watching them during class. So there must be something that's catching their attention. And so I think in this week's newsletter, there are 22 different titles mentioned. Maybe some of them are the same. I don't know. I didn't really check them or cross-reference them or anything like that. The first one is Sanguo Yan Yi, Romance of the Three Kingdoms. Number 2 is Zhen Huan Juan, or Zhen Huan Juan, Empresses in the Palace. Number 3 is Da Feng Da Geng Ren, Lord of Mysteries, or the Guardian of Da Feng, some sort of popular web novel. Number 4 is Qian Fu, Lurk, don't know. Number 5, San Sheng San Shi Shi Li Tao Hua, Eternal Love, or 10 Miles of Peach Blossoms, and so on and so on. The one that was actually recommended to me on YouTube was Da Ming Wang Chao, 1566, the Ming Dynasty in 1566. That seems to be a historical detective novel or something, a historical detective type of serial. I don't know. I watched one episode of it, or 10 minutes of it. The reason I say I should do more of this is because all TV shows are published in China with subtitles. They all have standard Mandarin, simplified Chinese characters burned into them. So that means you can listen and read. I haven't really been able to do this, but you would think if I were to start, if I spent 1 hour watching TV, reading these subtitles each and every day, this would be similar to reading a book each and every day. Of course, different content. And not only that, a little bit different from Do Chinese, because Do Chinese, you can pause, you can press on one of the characters and get the pinyin for it. But here, I would be practicing the reading and the listening comprehension rather than the vocabulary comprehension, I guess you could say. Again, I don't really watch much TV in general. I used to watch Billions, House of Cards, Family Guy. Those ones are kind of funny. Like Family Guy is pretty funny. What else have I watched? IT Crowd. I mean, I had to watch Friends because the girlfriend likes Friends. How I Met Your Mother. Those are some of the sort of funny ones that I've seen before, but I'm not a very big, I watch a lot of YouTube, but I watch YouTube on like how to make better videos and media marketing and stuff like that, not language learning stuff. There was one Chinese TV show I watched, the Big Wolf and Little Lamb or something. Big Gray Wolf and Little Lamb. I forget the Chinese name already. I remember it. But it's not mentioned in this list because it's not a serial drama. It's supposed to be a kid's cartoon, although it's kind of violent. And it was a topic in one of our classes. But I did watch some of that. And that's the good thing about YouTube is that sometimes you can find some of these TV shows online, but you have to know what to search, which is why I put the list in the newsletter for this week, which if you haven't done so already, go over to the YouTube channel, click on the About page, and sign up for the newsletter. And that way you'll get it once a week. I send it out. It summarizes all the videos that we do. And that way you don't have to go to YouTube to watch them, but at least you can touch base, keep in touch. And I offer things like this in the newsletter, usually exclusively, or at least until I can get around to making a video about it at some point down the line. All right, and with that, I'll leave it there. Episode number 44 of the Language Vlog Podcast. Thank you very much for listening in this week. If you have any questions, concerns, comments, or suggestions, please do get in touch. Best way to do that is to head on over to the YouTube channel, click on the About page. You'll see all the contact information there, whether it's through email or drop a comment under one of our videos. That'd be okay as well. If you sign up for the newsletter, as I mentioned, you should. You can also just hit reply to that newsletter and it'll come right to the inbox that we can get back to you as soon as we can. Thanks again. Stay cool outside. Good luck and jayo to all the students running the GaoKao this week. And I hope that the end of the semester is good for everybody, beneficial, knowledgeable, and prosperous, and overall just good and freeing once it's all done and over. Thank you again. Thanks again. We'll do this again. Have a good one. Bye-bye.